Hi everybody, in this video we are going to make a new table. We have made a new database called movies, but this database does not have any tables. For example, if we go down here to the world database, it has 3 tables. So, how can we get a table into our database? We are going through 3 different methods, one using SQL code, one using the create table menu here, and one using the table data import wizard. So we are going to start with the table data import wizard to import a table into our movies database, or import data into a new table. We start here and we browse to our data. So this is just an SCV file, and we open this. So if we click next here, we can either import the data into an existing table, but we do not have any tables in our database, or we can create a new table. Here we can actually define which database we want the table to be created in. We want this to be created in movies. And the name of the table should be films, but you could define your own name here. Then we can click next, and here MySQL automatically detects the field type and defines which kind of variable each column should be put into. So if we click next, we want to prepare import and to import data file. We click next and it's okay. Here we see that 10 records were imported, so we can just click finish. Now we should have a table in our movies database. However, we cannot see it until we refresh our view. So now we have refreshed the navigator view, and we can see that, well, in movies, we have the table films. And the columns in this table, we can see here. If we would like to print what is in our table, we could just create a new SQL tab, and we can write select everything. Let me move my cursor from, and which database, the movies database, and which table, the films table. Control Shift Enter, and we see here that we have imported our movies into our films table in the movies database. Before we import or make another table, we can, for example, remove the films table by just right-clicking and drop table. Click drop now, and now the movies database does not contain any tables. We just remove our code, and we can try a different method of making a table. So now we just right click here on the tables under movies and select create table. Here we can define what kind of table we would like to have, and we would like to have a locations table. In this locations table, we should have some columns. So if we just double click here, we have a locations ID, and the locations ID should be unique for every location, and there should be only one of them. So we set this as the primary key. We also would like this to be a not null field, which means that the user has to fill in the locations ID whenever the user makes a new record of a location. To select this means that the user has to put in values. And of course we can make a different column. For example, the name of the location, and we can have, for example, the address of the location. So now we can apply this, and then we can see the SQL script that MySQL want to run in order to make this table. Just make sure that these are not quotes or single quotes. These are accents. We're going to show you where you can find this later. Then you can click the Apply button and finish to execute SQL statements. Now we can close this, and we can go to our locations table, and we see here that we have a table with defined columns. The locations ID, which is misspelled, the name, and the address. To check what we have in this table, we can just select everything from the movies database and the locations table. Control Shift Enter, and we see here that we do have the table, but we do not have any records in it. If we delete this table, we can just select Drop Table, and now there are no tables in our movies database. So the last way to create a database or a table in a database is by using code. So here we are just pasting the code which we used, or which MySQL used when we used the Create Table menu. Here we see that we are using the Create Table keywords, and here we have to define which database we are going to create the table in, and the name of the table, the locations. And here we can just check this, and here we have to remember that these are not single quotes, they are accents. So this this sign is found close to this sign on my keyboard or on the same key. So I just press Shift and that key twice to get two of these accents. So, which is important because a lot of people use the single quotes and get an error. And here we create we define three columns, one called locations ID, one called name, and one called address. These are defined as different variables or different types of variables. The locations ID is an integer, the name is a string of characters, and likewise for address. And here we can press not null or write not null if the field is mandatory. And here we also have the primary key, which is locations ID, which is unique for each location. So if we Control Shift Enter this, we see here that it did actually run successfully because we have the green stamp here. If we go here to the movies database, we see that we do not have a table, we just need to refresh. So here we see that, well, we have a table, it's called locations, and we have some columns. We have the location ID, name, and address. So this was 3 ways of creating a table in MySQL.